Raining and raining and raining and raining. Man. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Recreational Sniper. Today I'm just kind of giving you guys a little update. I know lately I haven't really been posting a lot. I haven't really been doing any shooting videos or anything, any testing videos and that sort of thing. I am doing a continuation on the ammunition and rifle setup series, and I will actually be arranging those into a playlist soon. But I'm going to be doing a part 4 on that, and probably more parts to it. But the part 4 deal is we've already kind of gone over how the rifle's set up quite a bit, and we've already kind of gone over testing some factory ammo. So part 4 is going to be actually testing and talking about, well, actually it may not be testing first, but we're definitely going to get into discussing and talking about hand-loaded ammunition and some of the equipment and stuff that I like to use. I do my brass prep a little different than some people do, and some people may do more to their brass than I do, but most people probably don't do as much as I do to the brass. And what I'm talking about is, most people will do a resize, and hopefully they're full length resizing, not just neck sizing. Neck sizing's all right, but for precision purposes, you're better off doing full length resizing. And the reason why is because it brings that brass back 100% to the factory size that it is supposed to be. It's a controllable variable. You can bring the brass back to a specific size every single time. When you're only doing neck sizing, basically when the brass is fired, it gets fire formed to the chamber of your rifle, which is cool. And and in times past, that was always thought to be the most accurate way to load your brass, is to fire it in your rifle and only reload that brass for that rifle, and the only thing you had to do was neck size it. Now, we've learned over time that after a couple times of only neck sizing the brass, it starts getting really tight in the chamber anyways. It starts really getting snug fit to the chamber, and it may be hard to close the chamber to load the round, and it may be difficult to eject the round after it's been fired. And then what people would do after that happened, so they say they neck sized it only a couple times of firing that brass, maybe 3 times, and then it starts getting sticky, and so then they go back and then they full length size it again. And we haven't even really talked about trimming the brass yet, but then they full length size it again. They probably have to trim it, but now it's going to shoot different again. It's going to go back the other way, and it's going to change your point of impact, your harmonics, and that sort of thing. So, but the one thing that can keep it consistent, and the one thing that you can control, is if you full length size every time with your brass. So if you anneal it and full length size it every single time, it's the same every time you load it and fire it. You're not going to get 2 or 3 firings out of it and then all of a sudden have to do a different process to be able to chamber the ammunition again, or to be able to extract it reliably again. So for me, it's really important to stick with variables that are more controllable than, and there is something to be said about having brass that's perfectly fire formed to the specific rifle chamber that you're firing the ammunition from. But like I said, you're only going to get a couple firings like that, and then you're going to be forced to full length resize it and then trim it and all that. Now, when we talk about trimming brass, I go ahead and, especially with 5.56 brass, if you're buying a bunch of bulk 5.56, Lake City brass, most of that stuff is not to the maximum length, and most of it you're going to get 2 or 3 firings out of it. Even if you're full length resizing, you're going to get 2 or 3 firings out of it before you actually have to start trimming it. So what I do is, when I go through that stuff, I just measure and like separate out all the brass that's like really close to the same length. And you might get some that are like way short, and you might get some that are like way long that really do need to be trimmed. But in those, I kind of discard and put into a different pile. But and then I just keep firing the same ones and resizing them. And I really do that with most all brass. But I use just a standard hand trimmer because, you know, I don't reload tons and tons of ammunition. It's just, you know, like I don't reload tons of ammo just all the time. You know, there was a point in time in the past couple of years where I would sit down and I would load, like, one week I might load 500 or 600 rounds of rifle ammo or something, and then that would be my reloading for the whole month. And then I would shoot it all up, doing videos and just planking and having fun and target shooting and testing different things, and then that would be it. Another thing that I like to do with my brass is I like to uniform the primer pockets and flash holes, which some people believe in, some people don't believe in it. Some people only uniform the primer pockets and they don't worry about the flash holes, and vice versa. But me, that's another one of those variables I can control, and you only really have to do that process one time with the brass. You don't have to do it every time it's fired. So once the primer pockets and flash holes have been uniformed once, you should never have to do that again. Now, as far as loading it for ammunition that I would be intending to shoot in a semi-automatic, I don't recommend doing that. You should watch my videos with my AR-10 problems that I had with the 6.5 Creedmoor. A lot of that brass that was ejecting primers is because I was uniforming the primer pockets, which inadvertently does make the primer pockets just a tiny bit looser. And add that to the higher pressure of the 6.5 Creedmoor cartridge, and then add that into a semi-auto loading rifle, you will have issues with it ejecting the primers. That's just all there is to it. It's a pretty common problem. I'd have none of those problems shooting them in bolt action rifles. So that's just one of those things. Now, eventually with 6.5 Creedmoor brass, you are going to find that eventually the brass will just not hold the primers anymore, because the primer pockets on those it's just one of those design issues with that round. Is even though it's based off like a 308 case, but the pressure that it makes with the large rifle primers, eventually it will swell that primer pocket out enough to where it won't hold on to the primer anymore, and then you have issues with that. And then basically at that point you probably just throw the brass away. Most of the time I run into the brass cracking around the neck and stuff before I run into it actually not holding on to the primers at all, but it does have quite a bit more pressure than a 308 does. Now, if you can find 6.5 Creedmoor brass that has the small primer pockets, that's going to be a lot better for you. That you're gonna get a lot better life out of that. And I've not gotten to try any yet, and maybe that would be reloadable in a semi-auto, and you would reliably function without having ejected primers jam up the whole function of the gun, which has happened to me many times trying to get that gun to work. And I finally gave up, and now the only thing I shoot out of it is bulk what do you call it, what's that company, Cellular and Bellet, or Cellular and Bellet, or however you say that. They make 140 grain FMJ, just auto loading ammunition, and that stuff runs perfect in that rifle. But it's never going to be like super target good, super match grade stuff. It's just range ammo, and battle ammo if you needed it to be, I guess. With that being said, full length resizing, trimming, primer pocket correction, and then also neck turning is another thing. And that's another one of those processes you just do one time and you're done. You shouldn't have to do it again. And also annealing. Annealing is something I've only recently started doing. And I started doing it on the brass that I care more about. And I've kind of starting to see how much that's going to change my accuracy with each reload and that sort of thing. But yeah, annealing is one of those things. The two things I would say you have to do every single time for me personally is anneal the brass and full length resize it. You're only going to trim it ever so often, and you'd be surprised how many firings you can get out of a piece of brass before you really need to trim it. But yeah, annealing the brass is the best way to go. If you don't anneal it, you're going to get inconsistent neck tension, which I've found out. I was hard-headed for a long time and just really wouldn't do the annealing process because I thought it was just not really that big a deal. But the more I've shot and the more I've realized that it is that big a deal and it is important. If you don't anneal it, you're going to get maybe in a cartridge like a 6.5 Creedmoor, you're going to get 4 or 5 shots out of it and the brass is going to crack and it's failed at that point and you'll have to throw it away. If you anneal it, you can get 10, 12 shots, 12 firings out of a piece of brass, and you won't have to really worry about cracking and that sort of thing. Aside from that, that's all going to be in part 4 of the ammunition selection and rifle setup video series. And then part 5 is actually going to be testing hand-loaded ammunition in that rifle and see how it stacks up against the store-bought stuff. And then also some other stuff going on is tomorrow we're supposed to go out and survey a new area to shoot. Of course, we're using national forest land, public land, which depending on your area, depending on your state and the local laws and stuff, you definitely want to do your homework and research and figure out if you would be allowed to do that. In my particular state and area, the local laws, I've already talked to all the authorities about it, and I've gotten the okay. They say I'm not violating any laws or breaking any rules or anything. So, and I even showed them on a map and gave them GPS coordinates and stuff of where we shoot at, and they've told me that it's completely okay and fine as long as I'm not leaving any trash out there, as long as I pick up everything and bring my target and don't leave my targets out there and that sort of thing. It's totally fine. It is a little inconvenient doing it that way, that you have to move your targets and place them and pick them up every time you go out to go shoot that far. But for it being free, relatively free, with the exception of fuel expenditure and then all the work you have to put into it to set everything up for the day and then have to go take it all back down when you're done, it's a pretty good deal. Now, like I said, do your homework, do your research, and who knows, there may be a great area for you to shoot long range in your state that may only be an hour or two away from where you live on public land. Now, the issue with that on public land is the key word, it's public land, and a lot of this national forest land, people hunt there and stuff, so you're not going to be able to do this year round, especially during hunting season. I personally wouldn't want somebody out there just banging rounds in the woods and while I'm trying to hunt deer or turkey or bear or whatever. So it's going to be one of those things you're really only going to be able to do it a few months out of the year, which is okay with me. That's fine. It's a lot of work. But also being public land, you may run into people hiking out there. You may be running into people doing things that they're not supposed to be doing out there because some nefarious and, illicit activities do happen in the middle of the woods out in the middle of nowhere in national forest land. And we have had those encounters before, but, the real reason why we're having to scout survey a new area is because of somebody participating in one of these illegal activities, which is not necessarily a crime or anything, like it's really like a victimless crime, I would say. Is they were riding off-road vehicles, ATVs, four-wheelers and stuff in an area that had signs clearly posted up saying that you cannot do that, and if you get caught doing it, you're going to get fined. But they were doing it anyways. I mean, it's out in the middle of nowhere. It's like, who's really going to catch them? Who knows? But so we're looking at an area that's a little more remote, that hopefully we won't run into people out there having a good time on their four-wheelers and dirt bikes and stuff. Maybe they will stay in the other area away from where we're at, and we can actually have a good day of shooting without having to just get set up and maybe fire a couple rounds, and then all of a sudden they're in, you can't shoot when people are in between you and your target. You know what I'm saying? That would just be, even if, it would just be incredibly unsafe and disrespectful, and even though what they're doing is pretty much the same thing, it's just one of those things, as a law-abiding gun owner myself, and I want, because clearly I got out of the way to figure out exactly how I can do something legally before I, or if I can do it legally before I just go and do it. I don't want to ever be in a situation where, there's always potential for an accident, and we want to do everything we possibly can to prevent that, is what I'm trying to say. So we're scouting a new area tomorrow, hopefully, as long as everything goes right and the weather's good. Even though it's been raining off and on the past few weeks, we're hopefully going to be able to go out, find us a new spot, and the new spot we're looking at will have potential to shoot up to 1,900 yards. Woohoo! And I've got some ammunition I'm developing for the 6.5 PRC that may be able to do it. In theory, with the ballistic calculator and software that I've, run my ballistics through for muzzle velocity and ballistic coefficient and all that stuff, with the type of projectile I'm using, at the altitude we're going to be at, the barometric pressure, and shooting the direction we're going to be shooting. The ammunition I've got should have a supersonic range in that 6.5 PRC of 2,300 yards. So over 2,300 yards, like 2,340, 2,350, somewhere in there. So, and the reason why that's important, it has to do with bullet stability. And I'm not, I don't know a lot about shooting through the transonic zone, but other than what I've read and what I've heard, and then, some bullets handle it really well and they really don't destabilize. And then some other bullet designs, it affects them a lot more, and they become really erratic once they go from supersonic to subsonic. So, which is, around somewhere between 1,000 and 1,100 feet per second, depending on how high you are up in the atmosphere or close to the sea level that you are. So, with all that being said, I just finished one job for the day, and now I'm going in here and I'm going to start at my second job. So, woohoo! It's going to be a long day, but hopefully tomorrow we'll get out and have some fun, get some fresh air, hike in the mountains. We'll get some photos and some video and have a good time. But you guys have fun out there, stay safe, and do your thing, We'll see you next time in the next video. Thanks for watching.